Welcome to another episode of the Marketer's Edge, a series designed to share senior level marketing perspective about their challenges, opportunities, and agency relationships. Our goal is to help marketers learn from other marketers across different industries and to help provide perspective for agencies about the things marketers deal with every day to help them better represent their clients and win new business. Today, we're talking with Matt Romkey, the Vice President of Enrollment Management and Marketing at Mercy College of Health Sciences in Iowa. Matt, thanks for joining us today. How have you been?
Good, Mark. I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So I've got a small handful of questions for you, but before we do that, can you tell me a little bit about Mercy College, maybe its relationship with Common Spirit Health and your role there? I'd just like our audience to know what kind of organization Mercy College is and what you do for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We're a small private Catholic college located in central Iowa. We've got about 1,000 students, and over the last year have really been galvanizing a new path forward in education, which I'm sure we'll talk about, in online education and distance education, and trying to take our, what I call our products out into the marketplace. And so, as you mentioned, we are owned and affiliated with Common Spirit Health,
Okay.
which is the largest Catholic not-for-profit health system in the country. I believe they have, almost 170,000 employees and facilities across the entire country and actually even across the world. And so we have some joint ownership and partnership agreements with them, and they have affiliations with other health systems. So when you look at a map, which we have on our website, we have connections to almost every state in the country, which really is advantageous to us in trying to position ourselves and garner interest and partnership and students across the country. Because as we always say, it's good for them, it's good for us, and what we joke and always say. What's their expense is our revenue, which is zero, which is a zero goose egg on the balance sheet when it all funnels up together.
That's great. And what in your role as Vice President, Enrollment Management and Marketing, what sorts of things are you responsible for? I'm sure enrollment, but talk a little bit about what you do for Mercy College.
Yeah, so I oversee several divisions and departments, and my role has evolved. I've served as the executive vice president and chancellor of our distance education programs for a while. I've overseen our philanthropy wings, our business development teams, our continuing education programs. But currently, my role really is focused on partnering with our affiliates across the country and trying to drive strategic enrollment. That's evolving and changing as well in terms of who we're trying to reach and how we're reaching them as well. And then largely doing all the marketing work. We do partner with an agency as well, and trying to leverage them and be effective in our marketing
Okay,
outreach.
okay, that's great. Yeah, you've got an interesting background in both education and in healthcare, and I see you're now doing some teaching in the area of business transformation and technology. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about what kind of transformation the business of Mercy College might be going through, and maybe talk a little bit about how technology is playing a role in benefiting students and growing the college, maybe just beyond the fact that your online program is probably flourishing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I'm privileged to teach at Cornell University in their systems thinking and systems leadership courses, and it's really fascinating. I mean, they've got some great research going on there around technology innovation and how we can think about things differently from a systems standpoint. And as you mentioned, our online division has grown significantly. And we've got some, when we launched our online division, a lot of schools will just take what they have provided in person or, with some type of online learning and just put it out there and said, hey, it's online. And that was not the method we wanted to go forward with. And there's some really sophisticated, artificial intelligence that we've embedded within our courses to help students, to help our staff understand students' propensity to fail or succeed in their courses. And so we've got, kind of red light, green light indicators for whether students are going to be successful or fail. That's all generated through artificial intelligence. And we also utilize a really cool discussion board feature, which is kind of like a Facebook. It's a gamified way to engage with your colleagues versus just a standard kind of communication forum. And so, technology has evolved so
Mm,
much, and the education sector and the healthcare sector too, have often been behind the times in adapting and embedding that into what we're doing. And so we're really excited to have done that in our online courses, particularly, but also on our on-ground campus programs as well.
that's great. That's really cool. Do you, with that artificial intelligence knowledge about specific students and their propensity to succeed or fail, does that then enable the professors or the college in general to sort of tailor it down to the student level?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Historically, all those things relied on somebody to, be told to do something, right? And
right.
so it's not until you fail your midterm that the faculty identifies there's a problem and can connect you with a tutor. But through, login times and participation in course activities and grades on, frequent weekly assignments, we can really start to mash those together with an algorithm and say, Mark, you're not participating at the volume or the level effective to be effective in the coursework. And so instead of waiting for you to fail, we can assign you tutors and student support resources or English learning language tutors so that, we don't have to wait till you get to that failure point. We can embed student support and resources throughout the entire life cycle of a student.
That's great. I'm curious. Did that Was that technology sort of built organically within Mercy College, or was that something that your agency introduced you, or how did it come to be?
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of ed tech companies that are
Got
doing a
it.
lot of really cool stuff, and they have brought that forward, and it integrates through our learning management
Got
system.
it.
And so we've adapted the algorithm to meet our needs and to meet our students, but it's a loosely standard
Okay. That's
technology.
great. That's great. Very cool. So prior to joining Mercy College, you spent close to 10 years working in the healthcare industry. I'm curious, how that perspective has helped you at your in your current role at Mercy College, and are there specific learnings or experiences that you had in healthcare that you've been able to carry over into EDU?
Yeah, healthcare and education are really, very similar in how they deliver things and just kind of a philosophy of we're here, you come to us, right? And so within education and within healthcare, right, you go to the doctor when you need to, and they deliver services based on what they tell you you need. And that's the same way with education. We historically, as an industry, have always said, here's the degrees that we offer, here's the pathways that we offer them, here's, 8 to 4 doesn't work for you, well, too bad, and so we've really started to imagine a future that's responsive to student needs and that is different than what, you and I probably went to college and a
Sure.
residential experience for. And that's really transformative in terms of how we're delivering education. And healthcare is the same way. And so
Got it.
the parallels, while different industries, are very closely
Yeah,
aligned.
that's great. So as VP of enrollment, I have to imagine that the pandemic hasn't done organizations like yours any favors. I feel like every other week I'm reading stories about how the pandemic has driven people out of the healthcare profession, and making it difficult to get new candidates enrolled. It appears that you're not having that problem. I read that your enrollment's up 13%, which is fantastic. I'm curious, are there specific changes to messaging or positioning you had to make to help counter that trend, and also any changes in just your overall marketing approach that help you counter that trend?
Yeah, there were. Really leaned into storytelling during the pandemic and tried to, the life cycle of healthcare professionals throughout the pandemic has really ranged. They were the heroes at the beginning, then they were kind of the villains in the middle or the end. I mean, it was just kind of this weird
Yeah,
pendulum. And so, especially at the beginning, we really leaned into the hero aspect and really tried to capture our students who were serving on various COVID units or were working with patients, or our alums or our graduates who are doing that work as well. And that was really powerful. What we haven't seen, and you allude to this briefly, is whether people are going to be interested in healthcare fields in the future. And If you're going to be a nurse or a sonographer, I don't think you ever thought your life was going to be on the line.
Yeah.
That's not why you got into the profession. You got on into it to help people. And so that's going to be an interesting shift as time marches on. And, whether that's going to be something that folks are going to be interested or not is a big concern we have. And something that we're trying to figure out from a positioning and a marketing standpoint is just how do we resonate with people. And, the especially in Iowa, healthcare workers are expected to be the largest workforce and skills gap um, in our state
Hmm.
over the next couple of years. And so we need more of them, and we can't have less of them. And yet, um, whether people are interested in those careers is going to be really interesting over the next few
Interesting.
years.
Wow. So that category of workforce is going to have the largest gap between need and skill. That's something else. I would imagine a lot of other states probably are dealing with similar situations.
Right, right.
So Mercy Health, you alluded to the partnership sort of setup that you guys have with Common Spirit, the fact that they own you and they've got partnerships. Mercy College, has a number of partnerships because of that with health systems across the country. Curious, how do you market yourself or your students to these different institutions? Does a healthcare system typically have more than one EDU partner that they engage with? And if so, what do you do to help set Mercy College apart from other programs that are out there?
Yeah, and it can be really challenging because as you mentioned, a lot of systems across the country have local community colleges or local private colleges that they're working with, and we're coming in and saying, hey, we can offer these services for you, and we're all, you're a distant cousin, so we should, we should be aligned. And what we've really tried to do in those markets, I think it's two or threefold. First is we try to align our brand as closely to theirs as possible, and
Okay.
so. We use their imagery, we use their logos, because we're not a familiar brand in those communities, and so we try to lean on these large health systems who've spent a lot of money trying to build affinity and awareness in those
Right.
communities, and that's been pretty successful. And then the second thing we really do is we lean on them to help market for us. So they will reach out to internal employees, they will reach out through their marketing, through their especially their own channels to help try to garner interest in our academic programs. And so we've seen pretty good success in that. But yeah, it's challenging. We're not the biggest fish in the pond by any means, and there's a lot of institutions who are putting significant dollars into various communities that we also want to be in.
Right.
And so, what we've really tried to do is not just go in on our own, but to leverage those systems that have an established brand in those communities.
Got it. Are you having to provide, I think I talked to another marketer the other day who relies on dealers and distributors to help sell their products. And they, as a manufacturer, have to provide those dealers and distributors with the tools to help them sell. They have to convince them of the value of talking about their products. To what extent do you have to sort of take similar steps with these different institutions that you're trying to get to promote Mercy College over other institutions?
Yeah, and we're lucky in the healthcare sector being in such high demand that they welcome us and are
Okay,
willing to sell on our behalf. But there is an education gap there, an awareness gap. One of the partnerships we work on is where they'll hire a prospective student and they'll put them in the job while they go through our education. They'll put them in kind of an entry level job while
okay,
they go through the education. And there is just this gap between they're hired, but they need to be admitted to the college, and how does all that work? And so there is just a big logistical mountain that has to be moved to get all of it to align and to work correctly. And then students have to have the right outcomes at the end of it and
sure.
sit for licensure exams and things like that. So yeah, it's very complicated. And another popular model within education is you will work with different providers to help recruit students on your behalf, and
Okay,
you pay them a revenue share or a fee for service to do that work. And it's not a model that we've deployed for a couple of reasons, but it is a very popular model, especially in online education, to have folks, serve as your marketing wing and really bring students to the door for you, walk them to the door, frankly, and
Hmm.
and then they hand them over to the institution for the educational
Okay,
component.
interesting, interesting. So that kind of leads nicely into the next question. As you look forward, what's your prediction on the state of EDU specific to healthcare, and how do you think it will look? Will be different than what it looks like today. Will they become more integrated with healthcare systems? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall, I mean, education's preparing for a wild, half a decade ahead.
Mhm.
The education sector was bailed out through the COVID stimulus funds and some of the bailout money that was provided by the government that I think is going to keep a lot of private colleges from mergers or acquisitions open for the next 5 years when they would have closed over the next
Okay.
5 years. And so, the higher education's heading for a crazy reckoning and a crazy realignment, I think, over the next 5 or 10
Hmm.
years. Within healthcare, I do think there is going to be a new affiliation model with health systems. And, I mean, you see this in other sectors like with Google and, Walmart, who've created their own career academies. What a lot of systems are saying to us is, you're not meeting our needs, right? And that's something we've got to respond to. Because if like we see in other industries, if we can't do it, they're going to do it themselves, or they're
Okay.
going to find someone else to do it. And so there has to be a closer alignment between our work and what the systems need, or what the workforce needs with education as an industry. Otherwise, we're going to be really challenged
Right.
to be around for the next century, the
You,
next 100 years.
yeah, you talk about what systems need, and uh, educational institutions maybe not necessarily delivering on those. If you had to sort of define the one or two things that systems want the most, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's they want prepared students and they want a lot of them.
A
They
lot of
want
them.
students who students who are ready to hit the ground
Oh
running,
yeah,
or graduates who are ready to hit the ground running, and then some of it's just a volume game, and it's a interesting paradigm because they can't, in our instance in particular, they can't serve as clinical sites. They can't have the volume of students in their facilities that they want as graduates,
hmm,
and yet they want more graduates, but they can't have more students. And so it's really a intertwined mess. And as there's the great resignation within healthcare, I mean, it becomes harder, and we're constantly battling how much space do we have in clinical sites to place students because we can't bring in more than we have, but yet, and it ebbs and flows too. Of we've got high volume of interest, but low volume of clinical placements,
yeah,
and then the pendulum swings to the other side where we have no interest and high volume of clinical sites,
yeah,
and so it's just an ongoing battle. But I think overall, it's skills deficiencies and a lot of that's the result of the pandemic. Students didn't have an industry's entire education entirely didn't have the breadth of experiences that they normally have, internships or hands-on learning, and so students just aren't coming out prepared as I think health
yeah,
systems want
yeah.
them to be.
Interesting. You mentioned earlier that you work with a marketing agency. Do you have an in-house team as well?
Yeah, when I started, we had a couple folks internally, and
Okay.
we actually transitioned to be predominantly driven by an agency. So we
Okay.
had some staff transition internally. We have only one person in-house, and the majority of our work is done entirely by an
Got
agency.
it. What sorts of things are they doing for you?
They do, I would say, predominantly our digital advertising.
Okay.
So they handle that. We handle most of the, social media, internal promotional stuff, and some of the more traditional channels of advertising. But I mean, as you know, Mark, the world of digital advertising is so complex, and
Mhm.
that's what I found when we started. Is we had people who were trying to do SEO and trying to do keywords and trying to do social media advertising and all of these different things. And it was just so ineffective
Yeah.
because, you've got to really eat, sleep, and breathe it. And what we couldn't do with two or three people was eat, sleep, and breathe all of these domains. And
Sure.
so, with an agency, you get somebody who just does this one thing, and that's really been the strength of our partnership. And where we really lean on them is where, you can't do we don't have experts in HTML coding or web design and things like that. And so, you had all these people doing a hodgepodge of different skills, and they would spend, 5 minutes on the website a day or 20 minutes, and it was just not effective. And
Yeah.
so we lean to them for anything we feel like we're deficient in.
Okay. Any other benefits that you see in going outside and using an agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've really appreciated about the agency we use is just an outside perspective. So they will challenge our business direction. Why are we doing this versus doing that?
Hmm.
They'll challenge us to think about things that we never would have thought about. And you know, um, within education, the admissions team often is not considered a sales team, but they are our sales team, and they force them to think about things differently than that they do with other industries that is common but is not quite as common within education for a number of reasons. And so they've really helped us not just think about what are we doing marketing, but how are we positioning, what does it look like from the entire life cycle of a student, and how can we be doing that differently and better,
That's great.
which has been really valuable.
Yeah, that's great. Curious, is the agency like exclusively focused on EDU or heavily focused on EDU?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, we're their only education client,
Okay.
and that was actually an interesting selection process. But it's been really valuable. I mean, and we're in Iowa, obviously, so they actually have a ton of ag clients, and it's really remarkable hearing the things that they're doing in these different industries. But I always say to my leadership counterparts, I mean, they know our business better than most of the people in our business.
Yeah.
So
Do,
so that's been great.
that's great. So you find value in having them having different perspectives from different industries that they can bring to the
Yep.
table.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'll say, we'll try things like, hey, this worked really well in ag. We tried a LinkedIn B2B program that wasn't as effective for us, but they had seen great success in it in other industries, and so that perspective is really valuable. And they're always testing and innovating and trying new things, which is really
That's
helpful,
great.
even if it's not successful, to just always be at the forefront of what opportunities are out there, because there's so many of them.
Yeah, that's great. Sounds like a very healthy relationship. You guys are good listeners. They're good partners, and that's really great to hear. If you are talking with a marketer, whether they be an EDU or not, thinking about bringing on an agency for the first time, any advice you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about relationships. You've got to have a great working relationship with those folks. And that was my biggest concern with transitioning outside of our team. Somebody who reported to you is the ability to pick up the phone and say, hey, you're supposed to have this to me by noon. Where is it? Or, my expectations were this, and this is how it came through. This missed the benchmark. And so, really for us, it's about that transparent and very open relationship to say, you guys are pitching us this concept. We're not interested in that. Let's move on to something else. Or, this hit the mark out of the park, or we missed the target on this one. Let's regroup and figure out how we evaluate and assess that going forward. And what's so great about them too is they're very willing to say, hey, we did really well on this one, and we failed on this one, and let's evaluate and see how we're charging you for future projects and things like that. And that's where it really truly feels like a partnership versus a vendor. And that was the biggest thing for me, is I wanted somebody who was like an extension of our team versus somebody who was, a vendor, or somebody who we just went to for services.
Right. So if I were a marketer asking for advice from you, how would you suggest I try and unearth some of those things that you just spoke to? Because some of that stuff I would imagine, knowing how well or not well an agency is, uh, willing to push. Try new things and sometimes fail and hopefully most of the time succeed, may not be able to sort of present itself until you actually get into the relationship. So I'm just curious, any thoughts on advice that you'd provide a marketer uh, in trying to get at some of those issues to help them?
I would say, check the references. Ask for some references before you partner with them and really actually follow up and have, some detailed conversations. Take them to coffee. Don't just send them an email survey and, ask them to rank, 1 to 5, their feedback. Because that's where you really understand, where their strengths are
Hmm.
and where they're deficient. And, I've earned them a lot of business because I am their biggest advocate. And I also know that what's good for them is good for me, So,
Right. That's
but
great.
yeah, I would suggest, just getting to know some of their current business and really looking through their references and, even asking if they give you the director of marketing, call their vice president of marketing or what have you,
Hmm.
so that you can really get a true sense of who they are as an agency and where they're going to support you and where they may be weak.
Right. Right. That's great. And so my last question is, if an agency were trying to knock down your door and attempting to win business from you, what advice would you give that agency?
Yeah, that's good luck. No. Um, I do think that any agency or there's so much changing every day, and so there are areas where I don't think our agency is as strong as we would like them to be. And so, what we had before was a very kind of piecemealed approach to like, hey, this vendor is going to do print, hey, this one's going to do graphic design, and this one's going to do,
Hmm.
some social stuff for us, and I'm against that approach kind of generally, but I do think that there is an opportunity for kind of a gap analysis in terms of where our agency is strong and where they're weak and where we should leverage other partners to fill those. And so, um, for me, I hate like the general inquiry, reach out emails of, here's our services, what have you. But, one thing I've seen really effective is just a YouTube link with a minute or 2 minute video of a specific service that people offer. If that's valuable to me, then I can connect with you. But in terms of like a holistic service, delivery, it's going to be very challenging to earn that scope of business. But I do think there are things that we're not doing effectively. And really, it's about analyzing what we aren't doing
Hmm.
too and really providing kind of that analysis for us because if people can see it, we probably are aware of it as well. And
Right.
so, those general kind of we have a full service of options are just not very are hard to sift through when
Sure.
you've got a good provider. So I would say being specific and then providing learning opportunities without having to have a personal call or a webinar or something like that. So if I can learn quickly on my own, I'm more apt to review your services and how it may relate to
Okay.
what we're doing and effectively quickly decide yes, that's something we should explore or not.
Got it. Okay, that's great. Great advice. I appreciate it. So, Matt, thanks so much. Great insights today. You've got a lot of things going on at the college, which is really fantastic. Sounds like there are some exciting things that are going to, happen in the future. I think you've provided our audience with some super insights that I think not only will be helpful to marketers, but also helpful to agencies in thinking about how to best partner with their clients. So certainly appreciate all of that and wish you a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.
All right. Thank you. Take care, Matt.